and I do my usual checking my page because people expect
Oh,
that from me.
oh,
Oh, okay, there,
are we
great.
there? Okay,
I think
good.
we are. Yeah. What would one of my Facebook Live events be without me checking my page? It just wouldn't be the same.
Well, we feel more comfortable. That's the kind of editor you are too. So we feel more comfortable because you're so cautious.
OCD. Yeah.
All the best people have it. Oh
You
my
gotta
gosh.
be. You gotta be. Well, all right. Hopefully somebody's here with us today. This is I'm Mitzi Szereto, and I'm back with the Best New True Crime Stories Facebook Live. But we are on a brand new book today. This is the first event we're doing for the volume Crimes of Famous and Infamous Criminals. Yes. That's we're not the criminals, mind you. We're
Yes.
just writing about them.
Hi.
But I'm joined today by Cathy Pickens, who's in a very interesting location right now.
I am. I'm in Highlands, North Carolina. And my husband and I have had the rare opportunity to spend the last several months living in a bookstore. So I don't know how much better it can get. As a writer friend of mine said, "You are living the dream." I said, "Yes, I am." So, unfortunately, I was telling Mitzi I just got up here today and found out there's supposed to be a concert in the park right behind us. So we'll see. So,
Hey, you know what? I had a contributor on once, and he was singing and playing his guitar.
oh,
So I mean, a little bit of music we can do.
I could pretend that that was something I had arranged, but I have no idea what it's going to be. So,
Well, you know what? You can't say that my readers don't get a whole full range of culture
well,
when they.
that's true. That's true. Kind of cover the gamut as well as the globe. So, yes, that's
This
good.
is true, yeah. Well, somebody says there's a wave, so obviously somebody's here today. It's
Yeah.
Wanda Jane. Hi, Wanda
Hey.
Jane. Well, and Kathy's written a very interesting story called The Boy Who Thrived. Um, and the boy is not the criminal, mind you, but it's sort of one of these true crime stories where, true crime can be pretty grim. I mean, a lot of people do a lot of heinous things, but she's managed to kind of find a light at the end of the tunnel of this story. Now, tell us a bit about the subject of your story. Our criminal is who?
Ray Caruth. He was a professional football player in the States. Of course, that's, the pointy end of ball, not soccer. And he was recruited to Charlotte, which was a new team in the NFL. And it was big news for Charlotte to be an expansion team in the NFL. So when Ray Caruth came out of college, he was it as far as Charlotte was concerned. It was the first time they had recruited somebody that highly in the draft. Very talented young man, but as it turned out, he was already paying child support to a college girlfriend and did not want to do it again. And he found a tragic way to take care of the mother of his unborn child.
You sort of think that in this day and age, guys would have sort of figured out by now about this. Either keep your pants zipped or put a sock on it.
Yeah, something. Yeah, it
Yeah.
just yeah. Politicians, all kinds of people. I mean, I don't know why this seems to be so hard, but this was a kid who had, because of his talent, had sort of been pampered and pleased and everything. And the young woman he took up with in Charlotte was a realtor. She was making her own way. She's a beautiful, beautiful young woman. Her and her mother were very close. And um, of course, she thought, well, I've got this professional football player interested in me. He had a, huge signing bonus and, he was going to have a great career. And so I'm sure that to her, that looked like, the dream come true.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Ray was apparently very charming with women. In fact, the Sports Illustrated writer who covered the trial kind of gave a running commentary on which of his girlfriends and the beautiful women who came to the trial to his murder trial and sat on his side of the room. I mean, it was quite the parade, as well as, of course, his mom, who was a big supporter of his through it all. So it was one of those. I mean, we see a lot of these sort of domestic violence cases, but this one was in the, rich and famous crowd. And I think for that reason, even more tragic, because these were kids who they were kind of at the gateway of their lives, of something good.
Yeah, well, also too with celebrity crimes. When you're talking about sports figures, and I think this is particularly pertinent in the United States, that hero worship, which
Yes.
starts at a very young age, and you're kind of indoctrinated into this whole thing from school. I mean, I remember well myself. It didn't work on
Yeah.
me, but
Yeah.
this
Oh,
this whole thing.
yeah.
The ball player. This is
Yeah.
your God, and people don't necessarily want to believe it when their gods fall, and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
Which I want to ask you about a bit later. It's not covered in the story, but you were so. This was we're talking Charlotte, North Carolina, and this is their first big major football team, right?
Yes.
So this
Yes.
is a hell of a big deal here for
This is a
Charlotte.
big deal. We had professional basketball, and against all odds. I mean, we're a small city for that at the time. And then to get the professional football team was a big deal, and we were the only team that had the owner had also played professional football himself, Jerry Richardson. And so this is just something the whole city was behind and excited about. So, yeah.
Yeah. So in a way, there was even more emphasis on this team and on Ray
Absolutely.
and that whole thing about
Everybody knew the clubs they hung out in and where they like to go, eat, fried chicken or steak or whatever. And yeah, it was a big deal. And of course, there's always hangers on. I didn't write about it in the story, but my husband and I did some work with the Panthers. The NFL required them to have some financial management training, and we taught in a business school. So we go work with them some. And I met some of these young men. And one day I was telling them, here, you need to take care of yourselves, buy a house, plan for your future, and all this stuff. And I said, what does it mean to be wealthy? And this one young man raised his hand and he said, it means I can take care of my kids and my grandkids. And I said, well, I think you need to take care of yourself and teach them how to take care of themselves. My husband pulled me aside at the break and said, do you know who that is? And I said, no, not really. He said, do you know what his signing bonus was? It was something like $20 million. And I'm like, dang, reckon he wants to adopt another kid? Me? So, I mean, it's just, these are kids. They're kids.
And crazy money throwing
And
at people who maybe
money.
they don't know how to handle. They don't know how to handle the money or the fame.
And I have to say, they were the guys that we worked with. I saw a lot of them with really good sense about what they were doing with their money. And they were razzing the one kid who had gone out and bought himself a Hummer with his signing bonus. But I'm looking at the kid going, he can't really get into anything else to drive. So I think that probably made sense. It's just, I can't imagine being 21 years old and having that pressure. There's somebody after you that you kind of gotta, and I told him, I said, you got a target on your back. There's going to be people who are after you because you have money. And I think it's part of what operated here.
Well, what's interesting too, considering the money that would be paid to these guys now, we're talking how many years ago now? And
this is 25. 25 years ago. I mean, now the money, $3.7 million sounds like chump change, but do the math.
I'll take it.
But it was significant. Yeah.
Well, and these, and let's face it, these guys are put on pedestals, and women throw themselves at them. They're just, I mean, they can have their pick and they're spoiled. And so in Ray's case, something didn't quite go his way, and he figured, well, I'm gonna dispense with the problem.
Take care of this,
So actually, though, as far as Ray was concerned, I mean, you mentioned he was very personable. He was very charming and attractive as well.
Yes. Yes, he wasn't a big guy, and
Mhm.
for that he was fast. He was really fast on his feet. So he was one of those smaller football players, and yet very charming and very good looking. So
Okay. So the woman in question who he became involved with, who got pregnant, inconvenient for him, although she was excited about it.
yeah,
Uh, Sharika Adams, if I've
Sharika.
said her
Yeah,
name
Sharika,
correctly.
yes. Uh-huh. Yeah. A lovely young woman. She did work in a men's club, and that's what the press always reported. But that was good money, and that was also where you went and met athletes. So, and
Yeah.
she had set her goals for being successful. And she was selling real estate. She was driving around in her home BMW, and just herself was hardworking and very personable. But she was also very excited about this child and had picked out names for a boy and for a girl. And it ended up being a little boy. But um, Ray decided that he didn't want the baby, and she did. And that's where the conflict came in. And this is a story that plays out all over the place. It's not that, frankly, interesting a story because it happens sadly so often. And there were aspects to this case, though, that made it more fascinating.
Yeah, well, in this particular case, when we talk about domestic abuse, we think of generally the man, although
Hmm.
women have been
Yeah,
domestic abusers, but
yeah,
not to the same level.
yeah.
You think of the man as beating on his woman or killing her, but in this case, Ray's not the one who he didn't actually
No,
do anything to her.
no, he had a hired killer. Actually, these were guys who did yard work and chores around the house for him, and that's how they were billed mostly. But frankly, the guy that did the shooting, um, his name was Van Brett Watkins. He has only recently been displaced on my list of most fascinating courtroom witnesses. He was at the top of the list for a long time until the Alec Murdaugh trial just a few months ago. So Alec is now at the top of my list as best trial witness ever. But Van Brett Watkins is a very large man, and he had a very violent past. And he's the one who did the actual shooting. And there were two other guys in the car. And Ray said, well, we got to work this out. So he had taken Sharika to the midnight movie, and they had left and were driving down this road. And it's a road I would go up and down a lot. I still think about her every time I go down that road. And Ray was in front of her, and she was following her BMW, and he slowed down and stopped. And she stopped, what happened? And a car pulled up beside her, and they shot her. And then we raced off. But Sharika was one tough little woman, and she managed to pull her car into a front yard. Now it's after midnight, honking the horn on 911, calling for help. She lived until she got to the hospital, lived until they delivered her baby. And she managed to tell the emergency room doctor Ray was there, the baby's daddy was there, Ray was there. They would have had trouble, I think, maybe putting this together quite as quickly as they did, had it not been for her. I mean, her strength, her physical and emotional strength was amazing. And the she had to write it out. She really couldn't talk at the time, and wrote out notes that actually kind of spelled out what happened at this on that little 2-lane road, and that led to the arrests.
God, if she was not able or capable of doing that, it would probably never been solved.
Yeah. And the emergency room physician, I had worked with a program in Charlotte called the Forensic Medicine Program, and they have been training emergency room people, forensic nurses, emergency nurses, doctors, as well as medics. The crime lab folks worked with that, the DA's office, the hospital systems, everybody who would be involved in collecting and preserving evidence had representatives on this team, and they had gotten protocols together. And this was very early on, before we got really well formed. But this doctor had been a part of some of that training, and he got her to write it down. I mean, without the testimony that she provided, I mean, she was dead. She couldn't be cross-examined. She died after delivering the baby. But had the emergency room folks not been ready for that, we also wouldn't have had the evidence. I mean, people would talk about, if somebody comes in, a gunshot wound victim comes in, and you've got to get them out of their clothes quickly and start doing the surgery. How do you get the clothes off? Well, you put the scissors in the bullet hole, because there it is. It's ready, And so to teach people how to keep and you pull the bullet out, you're not worried about preserving it. You throw it over to the floor to be swept up and carried out. So these folks had already been trained about how to recognize and preserve evidence that might help build a case later.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, when you're in the emergency, and everyone's job there is to save life, but to have to also be conscious of every single thing that you're touching, that it has to be preserved as evidence. And
exactly. And think about the mindset that has to change to do that. So, and they did a really nice job.
Well, hence the training, though. I mean, at one point, I'm assuming that this didn't quite exist, and
no, this was
haphazard.
Yeah, like I say, not scissors in the bullet hole, bullet in the dirty garbage to be swept out. Yeah, and the presence of mind to do those two jobs at one time really was a critical part of this case. So that was key. And as well as, just like I said, her personal strength. She was fighting for that baby, and everything else was secondary.
Yeah. Well, so obviously, when she was killed or murdered, because it was murder, she was pretty much, how far along was she with the pregnancy?
I can't remember right off the top of my head, but far enough for the baby to be viable outside the womb. So they took the baby. She was maybe within a month of delivering. So they did manage to take the baby in a C-section. I can remember all this unfolding on the news, and because of the work I had done in the past as a trial lawyer, I was concerned at the time for this little baby. His name is Chancellor Lee Caruth, and they never said anything, but I knew things probably weren't right. And in fact, they weren't. He had lost oxygen to his brain for long enough to have developed developmental difficulties, basically cerebral palsy. So it's affected his mobility more than anything else, but he did survive. And
is that as a result of his mother being shot?
Yes, direct result. Her blood loss was significant, and that affected what he had to live on while he was still in her womb. And that's why they took him so quickly to try to save him. But this happened in the south part of Charlotte, and the trauma hospital is central Charlotte. So just the transport took some time to get them to the emergency room and to surgery. But again, a remarkable story of strengths, in that.
It's amazing, really, that he survived at all.
It is.
I mean, the both of them. First, his mother surviving long enough to be able to get out this information about who's responsible, and then his child, who probably, odds are he would have died.
Yeah. And it's like the whole city has watched him grow up. He is a remarkably happy kid. I mean, I've never seen a picture, and he's on the news a lot because people have followed him. And Sharika's mother, Sandra Adams, has raised him and still still takes care of him. He turned 21 a year or two ago, and it's like the whole city celebrated. But he does have mobility issues, and there was a video, and I write about this because it really affected me. He looks like his father. A big giant smile. I mean, there's so much similarity, even with, changes in his face as he's gotten older. But he was in physical therapy. You and I were talking about your physical therapy before we came. We've both had a lot of physical
therapy. Not for a gunshot.
Yeah, no, neither one of us for a gunshot, but way more physical therapy than we want. And you know how hard that is. And he was so focused on getting his legs to work, to walk independently. And I can't imagine that his father, with all his athletic prowess, ever worked that hard physically to make 3 steps.
Mm-hmm.
And this kid, he was shaking. He was working so hard, and he still had this big old smile on his face. And when he got through, he's like celebrating. I mean, he's just contagious in his joy. And part of that's him, and part of it probably is his grandmother, who is just a remarkable, remarkable woman. But every time I think about that, I kind of tear up a little bit, because he got that strength of character, maybe that ability to fight physically from his dad, but he uses it in his own way. That comes from his mama. so it was just interesting to see, and it's been interesting to watch him grow up.
This is sort of going off what wasn't covered in the story. So Ray is in prison he's still in prison.
He is out now.
Oh, he is out.
He is out now. The jury did not find him guilty of the most severe of the charges against him. So, yeah, he was in for less than 20 years.
Out of curiosity, does he have any kind of contact with his son?
He wrote a letter that the grandmother publicized. It was coming up on time when he was supposed to get out. And basically he said, "I'm coming to get Chancellor, and he will be my son now."
Oh, interesting.
Wasn't just his mama. It wasn't just his grandmama with her hackles up. The whole town probably had,
I don't think so.
It's like, don't know who you think you're kidding. But she laid it out to him. She had been open, and I think maybe not as militant as I would have been, and open to a relationship and that kind of stuff. And she's very kind, but she said, "You don't have what it takes to take care of him."
No, oh my God, I can't think of anything worse.
No, and she
that's appalling.
Yeah.
What kind of thinking does this man have to even have the nerve?
Well, I think the hue and cry, the public hue and cry, was so great. He backed off of that. I think he finally realized, he couldn't do that. So he lives in a different state, and they've kept kind of quiet about. I don't know that they've seen him. I think the grandmother took him to see him once, maybe when he got out. But so no, not a big role. But how could you have?
No,
and
I don't know how this young man would be able to even engage with the person who's responsible for all of this.
And I don't know. I mean, he would probably be just as loving and wonderful to him as he is to anybody. But a better person than I am. I'll put it that way. But the interesting thing, and again, I get I don't do investigative journalism. These are reports on cases as they have been reported. And I follow this case intently. And the thing that was interesting was back to Van Brett Watkins, the man who actually did the shooting. To paint a picture of him, again, he's a very large man. This was on Court TV. Court TV named his testimony as one of their top 10 criminal trials witnesses of all time. And I can remember, I was laid up before I had physical therapy for tearing my knee up, and I'm home glued to this trial. And Van Brett Watkins is up there. He just lounges back in the witness stand, and the defense lawyer just lets him go. The prosecution decided not to call him as a witness. He was willing to testify against Ray, but they decided not to call him because another one of the guys agreed to, and they thought he'd be a better, less controversial witness than the actual shooter. And so the defense called him. Now, this is the defense lawyer, to go off on a tangent, who represented Michael Peterson in the case made famous in Netflix, The Staircase program, also here in North Carolina. But anyway, Van Brett, they just let him go. And he just, told it like it was. And the defense lawyer pricked him a little bit one time, and he said, "I could shake you like a rag doll." It's kind of like, and he's so large and so imposing and just so certain of himself that through my television screen, that was frightening. And so then his testimony wraps up, and the judge, the defense attorney says, "You don't have any more questions." So this witness is dismissed, and he goes to get up out of his chair. Now you just have, like you have here, just a little bit of the person on the screen, but you hear this gavel from the judge banging furiously in the background, and there's a bailiff standing behind him, which is not normal to have a bailiff standing behind the witness. And the bailiff kind of tenses like this. And says, sit down, like this. And it's like another bailiff comes in, and Van Brett Watkins just kind of realizes what a stir he's made. He just has this little smile on his face. He just sits back in his seat. It's like he knew he'd scared the crap out of him, and he was enjoying every minute of it. So that's Van Brett Watkins. But he is also, according to an article about this in the paper, Sharika's mother said, he's the only one, including Ray, who reached out to her and apologized, and he sent her money. He's in prison for the rest of his life. If you make money in North Carolina, it's maybe 25 cents an hour if you're getting well paid. For him to send $20 is a big thing. And for him to apologize and to say, "I'm sorry," and to show that kind of humility, there's nothing he gains from that.
No.
Except his humanity. And so I've always found him an interesting fellow.
He's still in prison then?
He is. He is in for the rest of his life, yeah.
I always thought that when someone essentially hires a hitman, that their sentencing is as bad as perhaps what the hitman did, is long and is whatever.
It usually is. It usually is. And I know, Van Brett confessed early. I mean, as soon as they tagged him, he confessed. It wasn't a whole big, long, drawn out thing with him. I did it. That's who I am. And Ray kept fighting it. And Ray hired a very good lawyer. I don't know how much of it was his fame. The O.J. Simpson is the other most famous NFL player to get acquitted. Ray didn't get acquitted, but he didn't get tagged with the most severe of the charges that he could have. So that's why his sentence was shorter. And that was the jury.
Even especially for North Carolina, I would expect, I would not expect it to be as lenient as it was. I mean, because let's face it, the guy, you hire a hitman to kill your pregnant, very pregnant girlfriend. So it's like two people you're out there to kill. And he's out. And the guy who did it, who was paid to do it and really wasn't like premeditated. It was his job.
It was a job. He's doing a job.
It's his job. I mean, it's a job. Maybe not the kind of job we want to do.
Yeah. Well, the defense was that he didn't hire Van Brett to kill her. The defense said, well, it was a drug deal gone bad.
Yeah,
and
right.
They killed her well, you and I are both rolling our eyes.
Yeah.
I thought the testimony didn't support that, but apparently it created enough doubt for some people.
A drug deal gone bad. What does that have to do with her driving down the street?
Well, they were punishing her, or stopping the car. Henry Lee, the very famous Henry Lee, testified in the case. Well, the bullet holes weren't straight on, and I'm like, no, the car was moving a little bit. So it's like the jury saw through some of the stuff that was presented, but the drug deal thing was, they were punishing Ray for not paying up like he said he was going to. So
I don't know if it was punishing, quote, when he's made it so clear he didn't want this woman in her veins. Not much. Yeah, that's pretty thin punishment.
And he had threatened another girlfriend with that, apparently.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, he sounds like he definitely had a history. And I think this is not an uncommon thing, especially with these pro athletes. They spread it around, and then
and then there's no consequences.
Yeah. They don't seem to. The celebrity and the fame aspect and all of that. I think it does play a part in the criminal justice system, and
it does. And yet, how can we're the criminal justice system. We sit on juries, and so it's a societal thing as a whole. And
well, if I'd have been on that jury, I would not have been impressed. I hate football. So I had to the chair.
If you just played it, that's it. You're over with. No.
Yeah, they're already condemned in my eyes.
So I don't. You might not have made it on the jury. I doubt it. I doubt it. Yeah.
Oh dear.
So, but
OJ, like we said, is the notorious one, and he's covered in the book as well. Within the context of another story, and how again, how blatantly obvious is this crime, and yet he's like, the glove was
But my husband gives me a hard time. I had a friend who was laid up for like months, and she watched the whole thing, and I watched next to nothing of it. Both of us were white, and both of us had doubts about their ability to prove the case. Now, I've just recently watched a documentary with Detective Van Adder on it, and Rod Eckler, who is really a terrific crime scene reconstructionist, especially in terms of blood pattern analysis. And that would have been a slam dunk, but that evidence wasn't allowed in the trial. That it was clear, it was cogent, it made sense. Anybody could have understood it. Never got to see it. That was turned over to the judge, not to the attorneys. They're not the ones who kept it out. The prosecutor's not the one that kept it out. So, I think sometimes cases get too big to be decided the way most of our cases are. So, and I think this one was borderline at that level. But I can't say that the jury was swayed by his fame or anything. He was young and he was new here. It wasn't the same as OJ, who we had all seen in, funny movies and television commercials. So it wasn't like that at all. It wasn't that level of fame.
But you did mention, though, during the trial that Ray had a lot of attractive young ladies who were sort of in his corner, which we see this time and time again. And I'm not going to compare him to Ted Bundy, but we all know about the Ted Bundy groupies. And it's like, you know what this man did, and yet you're over there worshiping him. And in Ray's case, I mean, there is this, I would assume, you're kind of thinking, oh my God, did he do this? And yet you're still over there. And
well, these are women that he had dated or was friends with. It wasn't just, it
half
wasn't
the town.
Yeah. Well, maybe not that.
Close.
No, it wasn't that mean, but they were noteworthy. They were noteworthy to the journalists who were in the room at the time. I didn't get to see it on television, of course. But yeah, they reported on it. Yeah. But
So when
it
he was
wasn't the groupie thing, and that's
okay,
interesting. I've never heard of that with him, which is interesting because I don't
but
think he came across as in quite the same way. But yeah, I mean the Menendez brothers and you okay.
well,
Mm.
so in Ray's case, even after he's convicted of this crime, what was the reaction? Were people still supportive and his fans still sort of supportive or saying like,
No, you know, I can't speak universally, but the attention shifted from him as a sports hero to Sharika's mom and this little boy. And so all the reporting after that was on them for years, for 20 plus years now. So
that's a good thing though,
it
because I mean,
is. It
because when,
is.
as we know in true crime, and this is one thing that I try very hard to avoid with material that goes in the books is not to sort of create this idol, this rock
Yeah,
star out of a really horrible person, but to also
exactly.
to shed some light on the people that all these acts have affected, and in this case, it sounds as if that's people were really willing
Yeah,
to close the book on
yeah.
Ray and follow through with these people who really, you know, are worth
We're,
following through
we're
with.
the heroes. The
Yeah,
absolutely we're the heroes,
yeah.
and they're the famous ones out of the story. Which is what when you proposed this book topic, that's the first case I thought of because it had the people who were famous were not was not the criminal. And you're right. That's very rare. It's very rare that we know the victims by name and
Hmm.
remember them.
Yeah, yeah. It's just they sort of get forgotten in all the the reporting and
Yeah.
the endless television series and whatnot. True
Yeah.
crime.
Exactly. Exactly. Uh, uh,
So at the time when this was going on, as you referenced earlier, you were involved in an aspect of the legal stuff as far as the evidence and instrumental in getting that.
yeah. Yeah. I can't claim to have been the one who, thought of the task force. It was actually an emergency room physician and a woman who worked in the local crime lab. And they saw the need for this and were really the advocates. And so I was part of the consortium that was pulled together and developed the protocols and all. So we couldn't find another one in the country that was quite like that. There's two hospital systems here, huge hospital systems, and they work together. That doesn't happen very often, but they had leadership that saw the value in this. And imagine in a hospital system releasing nurses to go be in the emergency room to put stuff in paper bags.
Yeah.
I mean, as slammed as they always are, and even before COVID. So that was extraordinary. And the DA's office, the district attorney himself was usually there, and one of the assistant chief of police would always be there, and at meetings as we worked out the protocol. So it was a remarkable community effort to pull this together.
Well, that's interesting. I always love it when someone proposes a story and there's some sort of connection with them involved in it in some way, not necessarily as perhaps the person who's
Yeah,
committing the crime.
who did the killing. Well, and I appreciate the ability to write about that because most of what I write about has to be more at arm's length. And I usually tend to choose stories that I know something about. I'm, it's near where I was, or but even still, I don't feel free to interject the personal part. And so that was really, for me, a fun part of this because to me, that was what keeps that case alive in my mind and has made me so aware of all the other people who have found this compelling. The Sports Illustrated writer who wrote about this, you could tell it was incredibly personal for him because of this little boy. who is now
Yeah,
a
well,
young
I
man.
imagine
But
it would be. I mean, perhaps if there wasn't this child, it may not have had
yeah,
this much,
yeah,
you know,
I think
getting into the
so.
heart of people. You know, it
And
just
if his grandmother had, she's a woman of deep faith, and I think that that's what's given her the strength to continue to talk to people about this, and to celebrate him publicly for his accomplishments and all. That's got to be hard because that's always opening a wound about
mhm.
her daughter's not there,
Yeah, yeah.
and for her to have taken this on as a grandmother, that uh, at that age now where you realize you don't don't have quite the reserves you might have had when you were 28, but
Yeah,
and and
especially with a child that
a
has
child
special
with special
requirements.
needs, yeah, and
Yeah.
but she's always been very public and very gracious, even gracious about Ray, and she's the one who shared the story about Van Brett Watkins writing to her. um, that's what's opened up this, what would have been a tragedy and soon forgotten because it was just sad, and made it something joyful. And you don't really get to write very many crime stories that have that element.
Yeah, 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 exactly. That sort of kind of uplifts. I was actually sandwiching your story in between some of the more grimmer ones, just a little bit of a breather.
Something, yes, yeah, because we are interested in those things. I talk
Well,
about this all the
it's
time.
generally what happens, and the stories
Yeah,
don't have some sort of
no, they
great
don't.
spin that
Yeah,
you could put at the end. There is no great
yeah,
spin.
it's and yet we learn from them. I was doing a workshop earlier today, and it's like we need these things because they help us mentally rehearse for bad things. It's the same reason we read horror stories. But I think especially women, how do we protect ourselves? How do we protect the people we love? The brain science says we need to know these things, just because we don't really face them in real life, but just in
We
case,
hope we
our
don't.
our brain rehearses it for us, rehearses our responses for us. And so I don't think this is a waste of time. I don't think it's, as a friend of mine calls it, gore porn. I don't think it's voyeuristic. I think we have a human need to connect and to experience, even vicariously, these things. But I don't like to wallow in the mind of a sadist. That's not what's interesting me about it. There's always got to be this other element. And so for this case, um, a joyful celebratory element was, I just couldn't pass that up.
Yeah, well, it's a wonderful story. Again, the title is "The Boy Who Thrived," and it's definitely worth a read. As is the whole book.
Oh, the whole book is great. It's amazing. I mean, even the stories I thought, oh, I've read about that. No, there was something new and different in it. So yeah,
Well, that's what I try to get the writers to do. I say, well, if you're going to write about somebody who we all know, that's like a household name, what can you do that's going to, give us something new to think about, something new to mull over?
and they
That's
did.
the challenge because I mean, a lot of these cases are just done to death, no pun
Oh,
intended,
yeah, yeah.
So, yeah,
And that's
but
not the
yeah,
case here. I was so delighted to, get the book and get to read all the rest of them because this is all the assemblages you've done have been good. But this one, because you think you're going to know something you don't, made it even more interesting.
Oh, well, I love it when like someone who's actually in the books read all the stories and say, yeah, it was really good.
Yeah, yeah, it'd be great to. Okay, I'd like to talk to so and so about such and so, but yeah, I'll have to catch the next Facebook Live you do. So
It'd be fun, like if I could do like a one event and have every single person in which would be really hard because of all the time zones.
that'd be 24 hours of true crime right there.
Oh God, God. Everyone with their cups of tea or coffee or beer or whatever time it is, wine o'clock.
Yeah. that might get to be a little bit too much fun.
Yeah, I don't think I can handle it. I don't think I can handle that.
Um,
Well, do you have anything you'd like to tell us about that you're working on? I think you've got a new book out, don't you?
I do. I've been doing a lot of work for History Press. They have allowed me to indulge, and I'm doing a series of regional true crime books for North and South Carolina, which, if listeners haven't keyed in, that's what this accent is. So people say I have one. I don't know. But Western North Carolina came out, and I don't even know when, in the fall, I think. And I just turned in the book for Columbia, South Carolina. That's in the center part of the states where the state capital is. I'm thinking there can't be any really good stories from there, are there? There are.
Yeah, right.
So yeah, it's like, and I get to cover historical cases. I get to always include some. I love the new forensics as it comes along. There are some fascinating cases there involving that. South Carolina, which is my home state, it cannot claim the title, though, of the most female serial poisoners. That belongs to North Carolina. So
Claim to fame.
I know, but gosh, why? I haven't solved that mystery yet. Gosh, if you're gonna do it well.
Yeah, exactly. Also, don't you have some crime novels out too?
I do. Thank you, Reagan. I had written a series, again, set in South Carolina, in the mountains. So I'm in the North Carolina mountains. That part of South Carolina really should belong to North Carolina, I guess. But they were out by St. Martin's. And Jaffe Books in the UK has recently reissued them. They're all new covers and all new titles, so I kind of get them confused. But it's really neat to have them back out there again. I just keep warning people, don't buy the same book twice. Check check and see if you've already read it. I wouldn't want them to be disappointed. But that's fun.
That's interesting that a British publisher picked those up if they were a very American-based
they are as Southern as you can get. And
yeah.
Of course, they drop titles like Can't Never Tell, Done Gone Wrong, and change it to something else. But
something British that's gonna totally
it's Murder at Luna Lake. So it's but they've been great fun to work with, and I just think that if you look at the top 10 Amazon books in the UK, mysteries in the UK, and the top 10 in the States, they're different. And I tend to be reading more books on the UK list than I do the US list. More thrillers in the US and more what I call traditional mysteries in the UK. So I feel really at home there. So,
which reminds me, my UK passport expired.
You may not be quite as at home there as you used to be. So
They still gotta let me in. Go in with my wonky shoulder.
So, are you Mitzi Szereto? Raise your arm. Oh, I can't. Okay.
I can't do that. I just can't. I was joking. Well, it wasn't really a joke. I said, I hope I never get arrested. And they see that they wrench your arms. I'm like, no, you can't.
Your arm just came off. That would not be good.
Yeah,
yeah,
I better not commit any crimes or get stopped, do anything questionable.
I've been following your recovery online. It's kind of like, oh my gosh, please, she's got to cut a break sometime. This has got to get better.
I don't know. There might be a part 2. I don't know. We'll see. I got to hurry up and do a bunch of Facebook Lives in case I'm incapacitated.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And quit wearing those flip-flops. They're deadly.
Well, no.
The whole death by flip-flop thing.
I'm gonna shoes with suction things on the bottom. Like my luck, I'll fall out of the shoe.
That's okay. Yeah, I'm already what I call my Herman Munster shoes. So yeah. So, gosh.
No, someone said I should get bubble wrap myself up in bubble wrap. That's not a bad idea. It's being a bit warm in the summer, but
I was gonna say,
can't get talcum powder. Not gonna wrap.
You can't raise your arm to wrap yourself in bubble wraps. What are you thinking? Oh goodness! But you got to take care of yourself. You got to take care of yourself.
People are going to wonder, what are they just tuned in on now? Some medical show?
Yeah. Sorry. It's commiseration time now.
Oh dear.
So
Well, I'm glad we didn't hear your band playing
I
outside.
know it is raining. Yeah, this is an alpine rainforest up here, so it is
Oh, it's
raining. So
raining.
yeah, so that was
Oh,
good.
it is lovely up there. I've been up
It
there, and
is. It's
it's a lovely
beautiful.
place. It's just a
It
beautiful
it
setting and
is.
kind of like going up there.
Yeah, except I have a Mustang GT and I'm just screaming up the side of the mountain. I'm back home. It's like, yeah, just really
They'll be
obnoxious.
glad to see
So,
the back of you,
yeah,
right?
exactly, exactly. The tail
Go
lights.
on home. Go back where you
No,
came from.
only. Well, this is where I came from. So
I know.
only if they're from Florida. Yeah. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
City slicker.
Lord love them, Flatlanders.
Oh God.
But at least they know. At least they had sense enough to come here. They know what to love. So,
Well, anyways, we had quite a few people. So there's people who are actually alive watching us. I've been chatting with Cathy Pickens, who contributed to my recent new book release, "The Best New True Crime Stories: Crimes of Famous and Infamous Criminals," out in print, out in ebook, and it's supposed to come out in audio sometime soon. I know that because I did a big pronunciation guide with all these
oh,
foreign words in the book. So look out for that if you're
that'll
into
be fun.
audiobooks. Well, thanks so much for coming on, Cathy. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your time in Highlands.
I'm looking forward to it. Thank you so much. This is fun as always.
Thanks. Bye, everyone.
Bye.